What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you. Some updates in the Anthony Smith legal case from over the weekend. Obviously, as you know, Anthony made his court appearance, has been released on $500,000 bail. You also clearly know the charges. We have, though, a little bit more clear of a picture pertaining to what took place. So apparently, Anthony and his wife, Michaela, were involved in an incident after attending Gretna Days, which is a local concert. Prosecutors allege that that is when most of the threats took place, as Anthony was trying to get Michaela back into his truck. Ultimately, she was forced into the truck, according to them. However, she would later escape. The incident progresses until they get home. At that point, apparently, Smith continues to try to threaten her, intimidate her by using the vehicle itself. Prosecutors also state that witnesses, we suppose those would also be neighbors, had to come over and help the children and Michaela to reach safety. They also say that once Anthony had retreated into the residence, that is when they thought they had heard the shots. And of course, we really haven't heard anything from Anthony indicating anything other than this story. I think all of that, based on him kind of looking to have things sealed, is going to take place later on as we get into the trial. And it's important to understand that, all of these are just allegations. I mean, even though they were presented by the prosecutors, Anthony's not been convicted of anything. We have no reason not to believe Michaela's story, which I'll talk about in a moment. But obviously, we do know, based on the severity of these issues, that is what in turn set the bond so high. So this is Michaela's statement she put out on social media. Quote, "There's not a lot I can say right now. I love Anthony with every ounce of my being. He's a good man, a great dad, and an incredible husband who loves us endlessly. Anyone that knows us can attest to that. They made a mental health struggle into something it wasn't. I am safe and always was safe. He would never hurt me, ever. I called for help to protect him from himself." Now, her statement, you do have to understand, directly contradicts what the prosecutor said. It also, in a way, has some conflict with what bystanders would say as far as her being in danger or describing the incident as something other than a mental health crisis. Now, Smith's manager, who, the time I knew Anthony, he went through two or three. I'm not familiar with the current manager he has now. Issued a statement urging the public not to rush to conclusions. The challenge with that is, number one, this has already been done. There are so many people that are going to look at what's come out and dream a conclusion. Whether that's a conclusion based in favor of Anthony or not, that's up to that individual. But it's kind of strange to just put out this blanket statement to just essentially say that he was aware of the reports, but it would be inappropriate to comment on allegations before the facts are fully established. Well, you would assume if that's the case, he would have went to Michaela and said, hey, don't say anything just yet because this is where we are. Because his management is emphasizing that, Anthony is entitled to the presumption of innocence, which is correct. Due process, which is correct. Full use of the legal system, which is accurate. I've never understood the need to come out and proclaim these things that most people know. But if you were going to sit there and tell us that the initial reports don't reflect the complete facts or context, then at least give us something to go off of. And instead, what you're saying is, well, we just want privacy for Anthony and his family, while meanwhile, we know at least Michaela, but also very likely his daughter, has already been on social media talking about this. So to me, it almost looks worse when you have family members posting when they want to kind of get out. You can't really even say get out in front of things based on where this is, but they want to get out and at least have their side of things told. They want to defend their husband, they want to defend their father. That's perfectly normal. But at the same time, for management to basically kind of take this standard approach of, we're not going to speak on anything, we're not going to do anything but keep this private, we're going to let the legal process play out. Okay, but that's already not happening. Ultimately, it is a legal process, not public opinion, that's going to determine what happened. But at the same time, public opinion is going to stay very strong, even if the courts determine that Anthony is completely innocent. It's just the nature of how things work. The first story you're told is generally the first story you believe. So I really feel like this was kind of a poor management decision in all of this, because you can't have two distinctly different tones. You can't have someone come out from the family and say, no one understands. This was a mental health issue, which, by the way, most people are going to be sympathetic to. As a matter of fact, if you just go look around right now and try to find people discussing what's going on with this, there's a multitude of people that are talking about the sheer number of fights Anthony had. Obviously, the lineage of fighters that have had struggles after they've retired, not just fighters, but athletes in general. So believe it or not, there would be, no matter what happened, there will be a contingent of people that are sympathetic to the plight of the athlete that has to retire or has to go a separate path or maybe struggles to find their identity. We just saw this in a very, very different situation. We just saw this with Dustin Poirier. So fans are already predisposed to understand and accept that things like this are going to happen. But for one side to sit there and say, no, no one understands, this was all just a mental health crisis, and we were trying to save him from himself, and everything's been misconstrued and misunderstood. But everything else paints a very different picture, including what we can only assume is witness testimonies. Because why on earth would the prosecution so boldly lay out a case inferring that there were bystanders rendering aid, rendering assistance, if they weren't certain that those parties were going to come forward and be able to testify at some point? You wouldn't include that in any report. You wouldn't include that in any statement, because you would know that there's no way of proving it or validating it. And I would think you would almost, even though obviously you put people under oath, but they don't have to testify, they can always invoke the right to remain silent or not convict themselves. I don't see any world where they would say, okay, well, for certain, the family's going to testify against him, so let's just go with that mindset and lay out what happened. I would think they would almost certainly have, body cam footage, camera footage from the restaurant, camera footage from the venue, perhaps even footage from his home that would document exactly what took place, where there is no question whether that was just video or video and audio. So ultimately, I think all those additional forms of evidence, the additional court filings, the testimony, that's going to be what creates the clearest picture. And yes, you're absolutely correct. Until all of that comes out, all of these things will remain allegations. Anthony will continue to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, but overall, the community is still going to look as a whole at what's took place here and have genuine concerns for his mindset that night, whether it was for himself or for his family. And when you have management saying we're not going to discuss this, and you have at least two individuals of his family willing to discuss it, the water gets muddied really, really quickly. I know Anthony was not on the desk this week. I don't know anything as far as Anthony going forward, continuing to be with Gamebred. If I had to guess, this is probably not something that would impact his ability to fight. I mean, if you look at the things Jorge's been involved in the past, I don't think this is going to be some massive red flag. It's also fought in the Dominican Republic, so it's not as if you're going to have a lot of U.S. fans going there if they were going to protest. Not that I even think that's something that would happen, but ultimately, I just don't see this impacting his fighting career if he continues to fight. I think what this more impacts is fans wanting to see him fight. Do you want to see him continue to go bare-knuckle boxing if at the same time you have, at minimum, his family saying, hey, there was a really bad mental health crisis here that we were trying to get rid of or trying to help him out of, and all of a sudden things went down this completely dark path where you've got, obviously, the police department saying all of these people were involved. This issue went from one place to another to their home. And then ultimately, the 911 tapes tell their own story in and of themselves. Love to know your thoughts on it, though. Appreciate you watching it. I will be back as soon as I can with more commentary.